Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Nikki Thibodeau, a community builder passionate about people who also loves talking business, petting dogs, singing karaoke, a strong advocate for women, and the founder of the community. So, welcome, Nikki.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I've watched a lot of episodes, and so it's nice to finally be on one.
And you know what? Like now I remember what question I forgot to ask you. If I spelled correct your surname.
Yeah, it's Thibodeau, and so you got the hardest part is that like THI part.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
you
thank
did
you very
it.
much. Woo, yeah. And the first real question, what pet did you raise in your Tamagotchi?
Oh my gosh, Tamagotchi. I don't remember specifics, if I'm being honest. I remember having a Tamagotchi and it always dying. I was so bad at taking care of it, which is why I will never have children. Like it taught me that from a really young age. I am not to have a child.
And do you remember if you like, I remember there were like two types of Tamagotchi. One when there are a lot of different pets and you can choose, and others where like it's just one pet inside. Do you
Yeah,
remember?
I'm pretty sure I only had one pet. Like I don't think you had a choice of like what came out of what birthed out of the Tamagotchi.
Yeah, something like dog, cat, or chicken, or dragon.
Yeah.
And and yeah, it's so hard that finally it shits itself and just dies. So
Yeah, exactly.
so the next question, why do you love coffee?
I think what's interesting about coffee is that like when you're a kid, it's like you're not supposed to have it. Like you're not allowed to have it. And I'm a human that doesn't like being told what I can't do. And so when I first started drinking coffee, I hated it. I thought it was gross and like really bitter. But I kept drinking it because I was like, this is my earned right as like an adult to have. And then I've just like grown to like it. And then when I met my husband, he also likes coffee. And I think like when you have like another human to indulge in. So now we go and we just recently moved to a new city, and we go and we find different coffee shops and try the coffee. And we found this like passport book with all of the coffee shops in Montreal in it. And so you go in afterward and then you write what coffee you had and like how good it was, and you rate the cafe out of 5 stars.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're collecting your story of coffee.
Yes.
So far, what is your favorite coffee spot?
There's this place in Montreal called Yo and Co. or Yo and Co. And it's so from the center of like downtown, it's like a couple municipalities away. And so it's probably about 15 minutes from downtown. And I like how it's like quiet there. It, it's only really if you live there would you go there. And so it's a nice little hip place. But I really like the coffee. That's the most important thing, is that the coffee is really good.
I was just wanted to ask if it's like about the coffee or about the place or it's all together.
It is a
Yeah.
little bit all together. Like if the vibes are bad, then you're not going to go back, no matter how good the coffee is. But also a fun fact about me is that, so I'm originally from the West Coast of Canada, and where it's like a temperate climate all year long. And so I drink iced coffee, like an iced Americano is my go-to drink. But then I just recently moved to the East Coast of Canada where it's cold. Like it gets really actually very cold. And so there was a day, like it was minus 25 and I'm there with my iced coffee. It was so cold, but I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, iced coffee. So
Yeah.
So, Nikki, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Yeah, my parents. So my parents met in the Navy. My mom's an American, my dad's a Canadian, and they were both. My dad's ship had pulled into San Diego, and my mom was stationed in San Diego. And my dad's ship was like basically all men. This is like my recollection. I don't know how factual it is. And my mom was a nurse stationed in San Diego, and so my dad's ship invited all the nurses on board for a party. And the only reason why my dad talked to my mom was because my dad was drunk. Because my dad is like really introverted, and then in his like drunkenness, agreed to meet the next day. But this was pre cell phones, and so my mom said that if she could have, she would have canceled, but she didn't have a way to get a hold of him. She just had to show up.
I believe that she really liked him, somewhere deep inside, because she
Yeah.
could just not show up.
Yeah. But
So,
the interesting thing about my parents is that, like, and my dad's like a quiet computer guy. And my mom is very loud. She's like, her voice is meant to be heard in rooms and you will hear her opinion. And I think like the cool impact that's had on me is that I believed that women were meant to have their voices heard in spaces, which I didn't know was a unique experience. And so I definitely feel like really grateful to have had that way of being brought up. And also too, like I have two siblings, and we are all like really nice humans. And I think that like it's a big a testament to my parents for just the way that they raised us to be, good global citizens.
and how did your parents argue with each other? How did it
Yeah, so
look like?
my dad doesn't say things that often. And so my you can like tell by my dad's vibe that he's mad more than like if he doesn't yell that much. But when he's Quebecois, which is like a province in Canada, and in Quebec they speak French.
Mhm.
And so when he gets mad, his French accent comes out. But then it's bad because we start laughing because it's like funny, but you can tell that his French accent's coming out. And so then he gets even more mad. But my mom would usually, if it's like really bad, my parents did a really good job of not arguing in front of us. But if it was like they couldn't not keep it till later, my mom would leave the house. She would go for a drive.
And then come back and everything okay. Yeah.
And they would deal with it later behind closed doors after we went to bed. And we just like never really saw them fight, but we knew that like they would disagree on things.
You heard your dad's French accent. I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you wrote that, thank you, Dad, for teaching me that laughter is the best medicine. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, my dad is like your classic dad when it comes to dad jokes.
Okay.
Everything is a pun, everything is funny. My dad just like has this jovial way of being in the world where everything should like end in a laugh. And even when he has like, yeah, his humor is just really punny. And so I just love that he has that approach to life. Like things are obviously bad sometimes, but like we can spend time together as family and we can laugh, and then in that moment we can create something where we feel good, and it doesn't have to be like negate the fact that like something bad's happening, because that's important to acknowledge too. But it's just like how about we can create these like little bubbles of good times in and amongst maybe some like chaotic unfun times. And my
Yeah.
dad's always been the guy to do that.
And you also wrote that every Sunday we would eat lunch together and watch football as a family. So how it looked like? Did you just watched football, or it was all this discussion, or like you prepared for this? So what is your memory of it?
Yeah. So Sundays, so my family growing up, we went to church. And so we would go to church and then we'd come home and we'd eat like a Sunday dinner. And to me, that's like, like a roast and potatoes, or like some sort of like bigger, fancier meal than like your regular during the week meals. And we would all sit down and have lunch together. And then we had a separate like kitchen where we would eat, and then we would go into the living room and we would turn on football for basically, like, in my recollection, it's like the rest of the day would just like football would be on. And so as kids, we would like either, depending on the weather, we would stay in and like watch football. And we are a loud family, and so like there'd be like cheering and like, oh no. And so pretty like engaged in the game. Or like us kids would get tired of it and go outside and play, depending on the weather.
Did you play football outside?
No, we actually lived in this place that had these like big groupings of trees in our backyard. And so and you could like walk in them, and to me it always felt like when we were kids we would imagine that they were like houses. So each grouping of tree was like a house, and you'd go in and there'd be like rooms where there was like a bigger clearing.
Cool.
And so yeah, played outside in the woods.
Did you ever have a real tree house?
I didn't. No, but the trees were on like communal property. And
Okay.
so you couldn't build inside of it.
You shared a question on Twitter, like, does anyone else's parents follow them on Twitter? And it's like right away, I remember that I had my mother and my mother-in-law following me on Facebook. So I had to be very careful of what I posted there. And that's one of the reasons why I switched to LinkedIn. But how do you feel about being followed by your parents on Twitter?
I think like as a young kid, so I'm an elder millennial. So like I have had the childhood without the internet, and then, I hit 13 and then the internet existed.
Yeah.
And so I had that like crisp childhood. But what, like my parents were very much into computers. My dad worked on computers even well before the internet came. And so they were very careful to tell us about how we should show up online, and how like warn us against, icky humans, but also to tell us that like everything on the internet lives forever. So even if you delete it, it's somewhere. There is a way to recover it. And so from a young age, I was very much like aware of my social presence or my online presence. And so it wasn't a big deal when my parents started following me. I think the funniest thing is when like my parents would have the notifications on for when I would tweet. And so I'd be like at their house on Saturday nights for like, we have family dinner every Saturday, and I would tweet something. And then all of a sudden I'd hear ping, ping, like in the house. And I'd be like, okay, that's creepy. That's just so weird when you're like in there. But then it's also kind of nice to like know that they're following my life. And so I'm actually in this like weird space because I share so much online that I'm in this space where like I'll get together with my family or I'll get together with my friends and I'll be like telling a story about something that's happened. And they'll be like, I know, I watched you tell that story on Instagram. And I'll be like, right, okay. Let me dig into the depths of like what I did this week that I didn't share. But yeah, it's also just like helps them keep up. So now I've moved far away from them. And I think like, I like that they can keep up with my life, even though I'm not seeing them weekly anymore. But I think like other people would have a problem with their parents following them on all the social media platforms. But I also think that like when you are public online, anybody can follow you. And so to want to restrict that, like you could go private online and then restrict who can interact with you. But if you're going to be public online, then anybody can, and you should be comfortable with that fact. And so for me, it's just like, oh, they're there, and I do like that they get to follow my life.
How do you decide what to post or what not to post on social media?
Yeah, I think that's like the ever evolving question. I would post, I would say anything if I thought someone was interested. Like I would tell a story about my life that maybe someone else would find really uncomfortable to tell. Because I believe truly in being wholly and authentically yourself online, because we see these like curated versions of people's lives, and then comparing ourselves to those is incredibly detrimental. And so if I can share when I'm like really not doing well mentally, and just be like, I don't have much to share right now, but I can, like, you're not going to hear from me for a couple days because I'm just sad. And then the hardest part when you do share is when people want to like help you. But and so the hardest thing for me to decide is like when to share the bad. So I can't really share it when it's happening, because I don't need help from people who I haven't asked for help from. So I need to like go to my like safety networks and like feel better before I can come back and say, hey, I like was not doing well over the last week mentally, and I like needed space, and these are the things that I did. And so like to answer your question more directly, I will share everything. And so, and I think like I have a policy that like it's okay to share everything, but I do have to think about when am I going to share that in how it pertains to like when it happened.
Yeah, so basically if somebody wants to help, like it's already like you already worked on it and everything is okay. Do you write it like, hey, I had this thing, but everything okay, thank you for like...
Yeah, so I share a lot more on my Instagram stories, because first of all, they disappear. And I think that like there's this intimacy of stories, because you just see me sitting on my couch or you see me out for a walk. And so I'll be like, I won't say, like, I will say probably like, hey, last week, you know, you probably didn't see me sharing as much because this is what I was going through. And I'm trying to figure out how to get to a place where I can share when it's happening. But I think what's hard about that is building the right community, because the people who follow me like are kind humans whose best intention, like they have the best intentions. But for me personally, I just know that it's hard to get like the acknowledgement around being sad when I'm still sad.
Yeah, I feel that. Like, I feel what you are talking about. And tell me more about your siblings.
Yeah, I have two of them. I'm the youngest of three. And I have an older brother and an older sister. And I think what's like, I think reflecting back on my childhood, I think I like grew up faster because I had them who were already doing like more grown things. And so I think like I got to benefit from their lived experiences. My sister and I, like, we're all really close. My sister and I shared a room until I think I was like in my teens. And my brother, like, and I have a little bit more space between us. So I think he's about 6 or 7 years older than me. And so like him and my sister were closer to each other, but my brother and I are very alike. And so we would pick on my sister a lot because she was just so kind and like passive. And my brother and I are very boisterous and loud. And so, yeah, that's like our dynamic. But my sister and I, my first tattoo was like of my sister. This is me and my sister. And we thought we were going to be famous singers. And so this was going to be our album cover, like standing back to back. Yeah.
What happened to this dream?
I mean, like, let's be honest. I don't think we are of the caliber of talent that you need to be like a professional singer. I think it was just not in the cards.
Yeah, but you still sing from time to time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Love a karaoke night. And like, fun fact, if you go on YouTube, I have like I did this Music Friday project where I sang a different song each week for a year. And so I'd like play ukulele and like kazoo and layer in vocals. Those are embarrassing to watch, but I think it's fun to like keep up on the internet because like that was who I was 11 years ago. And I was really interested in that.
Yeah, and what karaoke means for you?
I really love, when you're, I don't know if you know this, but when you're at a concert and there's like the moment in time where everybody's singing together,
Mhm.
I love that time where like the music cuts out and it's just the whole crowd singing. And so I feel like karaoke is like a little moment of that. But like you get to be the one on stage sometimes. And I would be like lying if I didn't say that I loved the attention because I'm not a bad singer. And so I'm like, I can pick songs that people really like. And so then people are really excited about it. But the thing that I hate doing is going to karaoke with my brother because my brother is an even better singer than I am. And he's a boy. And I think like there's less really good male singers who go to karaoke. And so I'll sing. Like we always have this joke that I'll go first so that I get some people telling me how good I am. But then he'll go and then I don't exist anymore.
Do you sing together?
Yeah. So growing up, we sang as a family in 4-part harmony. And my mom was she was a paramedical. Well, she was a nurse and then she was a paramedical nurse. And so she had all these like insurance clients. And so every year we would go as a family and like sing for them for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And we even, we would tour around to like church potlucks and sing as a family. But we like got booked and paid for it and did like some gigs and we recorded a tape because that's how old I am. But like went into a recording studio and like recorded some songs. But yeah, I love singing as a family is like, I love birthdays when my family like has a reason to sing together. And I have so many videos on my phone from when we just like break out into song. And my sister has 3 kids. And I just like think I wonder what the experience is like for them to like have this like choir of humans singing them happy birthday in 4-part harmony. But yeah, I love singing with my family. It's one of my favorite things.
I also saw that one of your tattoos is 3 paper cranes for you, one for each niece. So
Yes.
what kind of aunt are you?
Yeah, so I think that's changed over the years, but you're referencing this tattoo here.
Yeah.
And my nieces are, so I joked earlier, like I'm never going to be a mom because I literally don't want to. But when my sister said she was going to have kids, I was a little bit afraid because that I was going to like not like them. Because kids are like kids and I'm not a huge fan, to be honest. But then my sister had her first kid and I would go over every Tuesday and we called it Auntie Visit Day. And it was just like, it was fun to watch them grow up. And then my sister slowly had a couple more and they're just it's fun to watch them in the world. And it's also such an interesting perspective to see them navigate the world that's different than yours was when you were a child. And so like they have huge access to internet. And like I remember there was a literal moment where one of my nieces like got a hold of a magazine and she tried to zoom into a picture on a piece of paper. And I was just like, this is wild. And then one day asking them like, hey, if you had to like mime with your hands being on the phone, what would you do? And they're like, well, of course. And I'm like, oh no, it's this. But yeah, so I was really, really involved in my nieces' lives when for years. And then one of the hardest decisions was like moving away, and they're still quite young. They're 10 to 4.
Yeah.
And so like you miss a lot of their lives. But what we've started to do is write letters back and forth. And my sister, luckily, because video exists, we get to like have phone chats and see each other. And yeah.
So you kind of like children, you know?
I like my nieces. They're
Okay.
dope. Yeah.
Got it. Recently, you asked ChatGPT, what should I talk about in therapy tonight?
Mhm.
So, did you follow these instructions?
No, I didn't. ChatGPT, it's actually funny. One of my current coworkers wrote into ChatGPT something like, how do I get my child to do what I want them to? And I think like the advice that comes out of ChatGPT in those moments, they're like, I'm not a parent, or like, I can't give advice, or I'm not a therapist. But like, this is kind of what you should start thinking about. But I've been in therapy for years. And so it's like, I know, like, I know what I should and shouldn't do, or like how to approach it. But yeah, sometimes when I have a therapy appointment, I'm just like, how do you choose what to talk about?
And if you like, is it hard for you to choose what to talk about?
No, I'm a verbal processor. So what that means is that I don't have like fully fledged thoughts yet when it starts to come out of my mouth. I just have to like trust that my brain is going to keep up with what's happening coming out of my mouth. But I do my best thinking out loud. And so that's why I have a therapist, is because being able to like talk about life in a way that they can make connections between the previous versions of you and where they know you want to go as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, most of the time I have like a couple of ideas that I've written in my journal. And then when we sit down, what I actually need to talk about gets uncovered through our like little intro talk about how I've been since I've seen her last.
Yeah, so basically you don't have to prepare. You can just
Not really.
come
I could
and
wing it.
trust yourself and hope that everything will be okay.
I think like also as humans, there are so many things we could like improve in our lives. And so there's always something to talk about with your therapist.
So I saw like this great painting you made, and like and you wrote, I made another sticker, why not me? So tell me more about the why not me thing.
Yeah, I have that right in front of me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like want to do with my life is I realize that I have like a privilege. So I'm a white woman in America, and that comes with a ton of privilege, like English being my first language in this world, ton of privilege. And I think that like with that privilege, with great power comes great responsibility, as Spider-Man would say. And I think like, I take that to heart in the way of like, there are people who could benefit from how I move about the world. But I'm not less subjected to imposter syndrome than the next person. Like, I don't think that I am necessarily like the human who should be doing the thing, because I don't necessarily feel qualified. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself specifically when I was running a women's ERG, employee resource group, mm-hmm. I found myself saying like, I'm not the right person for this. Like, I'm not the best suited human for this, but I had to keep reminding myself that I was the human being willing to do it. And through that, I had to go, okay, well, why not me? Like, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to do it in a careful way. And so I've taken on, so it sprouted from that. And now I'm in this place of like, how many times can I hit myself on this into a place where I have to say, okay, well, why not me? And so, for example, like creating the community. I'm what I call like a junior senior community manager. Like I am new to being in senior positions. Only been there for like a couple of years. And so I feel like saying, oh, I'm going to start a community for senior community professionals when there are people who are way more qualified to do that, you kind of have to say, okay, well, but why not me? Like, I'm willing to do it. I have the time, and I think I can build it in a really good, authentic way. And so I do that with a lot of things in my life. And I'm hoping that by living my life out loud and saying the times when I feel like I have to say, why not me? Other people will start thinking like, oh, well, why not me? Like, why shouldn't I do that? And because I feel like there are more people who are worth, or who are like, are the best human to do the thing, but they don't feel like they don't know their worth. And so they'll do incredible things if they can just feel like, okay, well, why not?
So between asking why not me and taking action, what is the gap?
I think like for me, it that is the gap. It's like asking for or having permission to do it. I feel like we always want someone to validate that we're right before we do something. But the problem is that if you're going to go into new enough territory, no one will know if you're right. And you won't know if you're right until you do it and then iterate. Like one of the previous episodes, you were talking to Carrie Melissa Jones, and you were talking about how you love making mistakes. And I think that like, that's the way you go through life, is like not expecting the jump isn't why not me? And then I'm going to do something perfectly. Like that's never going to happen. But your leap, I guess, would be to say, why not me? And then feel comfortable with making mistakes and like learning from those.
Yeah. So when you say why not me, then you start immediately doing, or you start planning, like what is the process? How this process looks for you?
Yeah, I think like I have up before the why not me, I've been thinking about doing something for a while,
Okay.
and likely like had conversations to validate, or like I'm ready to take the action, but I haven't yet decided that I'm the right person to do that, or like that I have enough ready for me to go. But the best way that I learn personally is through iteration. And so I just have to get started in order to make something better.
Talking about the community, even though I promised not to use the word community, how do you feel while sending rejections to your friends?
Gosh. Okay, I got into community because I love humans, and I love humans who want to better themselves. Like I used to work at Shopify, and I think like building for entrepreneurs is one of the coolest audiences you could build for, because they have stake in the game. They like need to get better in order to be able to grow. And so if they're like hungry for what you're going to be building. And so, yeah, does that answer the question?
No. No.
No, ask it again.
Ask you again. How do you feel while sending rejections to your friends?
Right. Okay. I was avoiding that. Yeah, I don't like saying no, but one of the things that like you learn through community building is that a curated room is better than everyone's invited, because there's more value in that space. But I'm really bad. I like to see the potential in people. And so if someone I know applies for the community, or this has happened, I'm like, well, I know them and I know that they're capable of getting there, and they would have good conversation. And then I'm like making up reasons why they should come in, when realistically, the whole point of the community is to curate a space of folks who have been doing it, and have been in community for a long time. And so I actually have had to create like a little team within the community to help gut check,
Mhm.
because I would probably let people in who should not be in, if I didn't have someone else to just validate that it's okay to say no to them.
How do you approach writing this letter?
Yeah, so for me, for my own mental health, I've had to make it really robotic.
Mhm.
And so everyone gets the same rejection. But at the bottom of that email, it says, P.S. I'm a human and I could make mistakes. So if you believe I've made an error, please
Mhm.
reply to this email. Because I think that like LinkedIn, like I have to go based off of what you've said in your replies to this survey that
Yeah.
you apply with, and then your LinkedIn. And so if
Mhm.
your LinkedIn doesn't tell the right story, or if you haven't necessarily told the story well, then I could be sending a rejection to someone who is very well qualified to be a
Mhm.
part of the community. But yeah, I think the hardest part is when you know that they should not come in, but you want them to because you like them.
Yeah, yeah, I totally feel that. Yeah, it's so hard to say no. And, eh.
Especially to good humans.
Yeah, it's I feel like being a human is the hardest part, you know? Like,
Yes, yeah. That
and
is what makes our jobs a little bit harder.
200% harder.
Yeah.
And you wrote that you approach with way too much optimism and then have to adjust after the first trial. Tell me more
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I like this actually, I've pinned it down to where this started. My first boss when I was 15, she loved to tell me I could do something. So she'd be like, I worked in like a Walmart shoe department. And she would be like, okay, tonight you're going to do this. And she would give me a job. And what I didn't know, she was giving me a job that was probably not possible, but she wanted
Mhm.
to see how far I would get, or she wanted to see how I would come up with solutions. And so I remember the first time she gave me a task that when I looked at it, I was like, I don't know how that's even possible. But I mean, she thinks I can, so I'm going to go for it. And so I did it. And I had like broken a couple of rules, like merchandising rules, but I was like, hey, this is what she wanted, so I'm going to get it done. And so we had a conversation the next day, and she was just like, wow, like this is some really good problem solving. And like this is why we can't do it this way. But I'm glad that you found like a way to get it done. And so we just kind of like operated that way, where she would be like, I don't know if you have enough time to do this. Then she was forthcoming with like the barriers that could be there, but she'd be like, I don't know if you have enough time in your shift tonight, but I would love to see if you could get this done. And then I'd be like, I love a problem and I love seeing how far I can get on it. And so I've taken that into like the rest of my life, like just in general. Like when my husband and I decided we were going to move, I was like, well, let's move like in a couple months. And he was like, maybe not a couple months. Like, let's. And then also, where we moved, I'd never visited before. And so it was like, why not? Like, I'm a really adaptable human. And I think that, like, I know that the first iteration of things isn't going to be the last. And so if someone says, hey, I want you to put on 4 events this month, I'll go, okay. And then I'll like come back to myself and start planning it. And then I'll come back and be like, maybe we do 1 event. But like my first optimism will always be like, hey, let's see if that's possible. Sure. Let me give it a go. And then I can come back with like real reasons why that's not possible, or like where the barriers are, what we would need to deprioritize, etc. But I always like to give the big things a go before saying no.
And how do you feel about breaking some rules during your journey?
I love breaking the rules. I absolutely love it. I think like if I didn't break the rules, I wouldn't be able to be myself and also be a professional. Like, I think like there are these like standards of how you're supposed to look or how you're supposed to act, especially online. If you want to be like one day I'm going to be a chief community officer, and that's a fact. But I don't look like an executive. And I think that like somewhere down the line, someone asked me to, like, society asked me to choose, am I going to be a like working professional, or am I going to be myself and like get tattoos and have colored hair and like take up space in the world because I'm a woman? And I was like, no, why not both? And so I really want to like be myself and also continue like doing the things that I want to do. And so I think you have to break rules in order to, especially society's rules, in order to get that done. And I think like rules are kind of like bumpers on your life. It's like rules are there so that there's not chaos. And so there are calculated risks that are absolutely like could be classified as rule breaking. But yeah, I'm a huge rule breaker, love breaking the rules. I hate when people tell me that I can't do something.
Did anyone ever motivate you by saying that you can't do something?
Oh, I bet. Yeah, 100%. Like that is a good way. If I don't know you're doing it on purpose, probably a great way to motivate me. But like if someone says that I can't do something, I'm just like, can't I? Like when I've always been overweight, like plus size my whole life, and someone's like, you'll never be a runner. And then I like ran a half marathon and I was like, see, I'd never want to do that again. But I did it, and heck you. Yeah.
And you also told that you moved to a town, to a place where you've never been before. So how did you decide where to move?
Yeah, so it's my husband, I've lived in the same place. This is actually something that we share, having lived in the same place our whole lives. And so I had met my husband, and he's from a big city in Canada called Toronto. And we lived on an island called Vancouver Island. And it's a small, like, island time is real, you know, just like it's chill and relaxed. And but there's just like, that's where I lived my whole life.
Yeah.
And so when I met my husband and we got married, he had expressed that, like, you know, maybe one day I'd like to live in another place, like a big city again. And I was just like, okay, this is when I was like, okay, let's make it happen. Let's just do it. Like, why not? And so when we were choosing where to live, we had decided, okay, for our first move together, let's stay in Canada to make it a little bit easier. And so big cities in Canada, there aren't like that many big cities. And so it was like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal were the ones on our list. And Vancouver just seemed like it's so close. Like I was on the island from Vancouver. And so it was like, it's a big move for like not a good reason, not enough distance. And then it was like, okay, well, Toronto is where Charles is from, my husband is from. And so let's not do that. And so I was like, well, let's go to Montreal.
Easy choice.
It's just like process of elimination. But the interesting thing about Montreal is that it's like a French province. So everything's in French here. Montreal is a tourist town, so there is some English spoken here. But as a rule, it was like, I think a little bit more than we bargained for in terms of like culture shock and a big difference from what we were living.
Do you have any thoughts of moving somewhere else sometimes later?
I think like what our conversations now are, because we both work remote, that we would go and live somewhere else for a little while, but that we would come back to Montreal. One of the things we love about Montreal is this is probably going to sound bad, but we like don't have family here. And so there's like a little bit of freedom that comes with like, oh, you can do, like, you get to craft your time. Yeah. There's no one like asking some of that time. And so we're within driving distance to his family, and we go back at least once a year to visit mine. But I think like this is a good home base. But I think we'll probably like go live in New Zealand for 3 months and then come back, and like those types of like freedoms that you have as not having kids and living or working remote jobs.
And how did you feel during your first solo subway ride?
I think like really overwhelmed. There's just like, I'm a visual person. And so you go into tunnels and there's no like cues about where you are until you like hit another station. And then everybody else, I think this is like a good metaphor about life, maybe as I'm thinking about it, but everybody else, it feels like they know what they're doing. And like, this is so easy and they probably do it every day. And this is your first time. And like, what if you get off at the wrong stop? And what if you like don't or like, what if the doors don't, I don't know. There's so many things that could go wrong. Yeah, I was pretty overwhelmed and I was trying to get somewhere on time. Like I was meeting a group of people. And so I like had that extra pressure that I didn't want to be late.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like when you're doing it for the first time, it's like, what's going on? Who are those people? Like, where'd you go?
And there was like a moment where the train stopped and I was like, what's happening? You can't, like, I don't know anybody around me. And like nobody seemed bothered. And it was just like, are we like, does it stop here for some time? Or like, what's happening? Is everything okay? Yeah, it was just weird.
Yeah, it just reminded me Man in Black movie, how it started like the giant worm were like eating the whole metro. And
so many things can go wrong.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So, Nikki, what is your favorite hair color so far?
Okay, I don't have a favorite. I think that like, so my next hair color is going to be gray. I'm going to like literally dye my hair gray, which is, we're on our way there. But I think what's interesting about hair color that I've loved about it is that there's like color theory involved. And so when I get my hair done, the color from the stylist is going to be like a light, or it'll like be able to fade into something light so that I can do something over top of it.
Yeah.
And so usually by the time it's time to go to the hairstylist again, I've like just come out of the purple and blue phase, which is hard to do something over top of. And then I go back to the hairstylist and she brings me back to like the warm colors. But this time we're going to go stark gray and see how it goes.
So basically, to have the next color, you have to depend on what you had before. So you can't just like change it immediately. You
can, but you can't do that very often because it'll really mess up your hair. So I do that only twice a year, where I start anew.
So do you have any more plans, like gray next? And do you look so far in the future?
No.
Okay.
I can't do that. I'm like I love planning for the future when it comes to work, but for my life, I'm very impulsive. I like to like have an idea and then do it as quickly as possible.
Why not me? You know? What makes you to take the paints and paint something?
I am not a good painter. And I think that like one of the reasons why it's important to say that is because there are different reasons why people paint. And for me, it's fun. And it's also like a creative outlet where I've learned to be okay with being bad. Like I'm not necessarily going to hang something on my wall if I paint it. It has to be that I'm enjoying this process. And it doesn't need to be perfect. And so what I really like about painting is I think it's the first thing, because I'm a high achiever. And I think like it's probably the first activity I've done where I was okay with being really bad. And so I do have some paintings like that I've done, but usually someone's like, the ones that are on my walls are like someone's helping me or instructing me on what to do next. I don't really have ones that I've like just painted from my brain.
And how it works instructing? Like, do you ask somebody like, hey, I'm going to paint something, can you help me? Or how it works?
In North America, there's these things, and I don't know how far reaching globally it is, but there are these things called paint nights. And so pre-pandemic, it was like you would go to a restaurant or like a bar, and they would have had set up like 20 easels. And so you go with your friends and you have some wine and you paint, but there's like an instructor who's like telling you step by step how to create, or like how to, like what the theory is and like why are we doing it this way. And at the end you all have like the same painting but different because you all did it. And so that's my favorite way. The other way was like this one up here is like a little cactus, and I had someone who like actually knew how to paint help me like figure out shading and like that kind of stuff. Once I was like, I'm going to do a cactus, and then I painted it and they were like, okay, so now let's like give life to the cactus. And so I like it when it's like low pressure. And nothing I paint ever like starts out with the idea that I'm going to put it on my wall. We have to see how it comes out.
Does wine affect in a good way the painting?
I think that like, depending on, for me personally, yes, because it like makes you care a little less about, little details.
Once you shared, like reshared on Instagram, my most toxic trait is I can only have no wine or an entire bottle and nothing in between. So describe Nikki before and after an entire bottle. What is the difference?
I would argue that they are the same human. I think like when I was younger, that wasn't true. But after an entire bottle of wine, I might be just like a little bit sillier. But and like a little, a little bit sillier, a little less serious. But I'm always loud, no matter the time of day. And I'm always a little bit silly, but a lot more silly when I'm a bottle deep.
And just a little and a lot. Yeah, got it. Nikki, I wish to have the sky is the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So, painting or singing?
Singing.
Laughing or crying?
Laughing.
What are your favorite color and song?
Favorite color is pink. And my favorite song is It Always Changes.
For now?
Yeah.
What is your favorite song?
What is it right now? There's a song called, I don't remember the artist, but it's called Players. And I think that her name is like Koi something. But I'm going to look it up really quickly. My liked songs. Koi Leray.
Yeah. Got it. If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
I think I would want to have invisibility.
I don't know why, but I was like just imagining you saying that.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like I don't have any ideas why, but I was just like, before you told it, I was like, invisibility. Like
yeah.
Weird. Okay, so at the moment, who do you learn from in the community world? Name one person.
Ooh, one person. Oh, interesting. I want to go with someone who's like not super well known. Sarah Saunders. She writes for Rosie Land, and she's been doing these really cool interviews of community builders, like written essay type stuff.
Cool. I've never seen. I've never. Yeah, I would definitely check.
Mm-hmm.
And name two people who I should definitely have this conversation with.
I think you should talk to Amanda Peterson. They're really cool. And then I just this week met someone named Emily Jablonski. And I want to have a conversation like this with her. So I'll say her.
Okay, thank you very much. And is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
I think that if you were trying to be controversial, you would have asked me what my favorite dog was, dog breed, and it would have been the hardest question to answer. But right now, a Bernese Mountain Dog.
Do you want to have this dog?
Yes. Yeah. After
Are
my
you,
husband and I travel a lot, we'll come back and we'll settle down and we'll get a dog.
got it. So when somebody sees photos of your dog, they can understand that you're already settled down.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Got it. You know, Nikki, from the moment we had a conversation with you about the community and had this first call, I definitely have to have this conversation with Nikki because she's so fun, she's so interesting, she's so deep person, and like we're having, I feel like we're the same vibe.
Yeah.
And after having this conversation with you, I understood like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Like, so that's totally it. So thank you very much for finding a time, for having this conversation, for sharing all this stuff about you. Like, I'm getting this feeling that, you know, you are becoming my friend. So thank you
I
very much for
agree.
that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and see you in the community world.
You bet.
And in the community for sure. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.